Squidward Tentacles is supposed to be the villain. Or at least that's how we're introduced to him when we're kids. He's grumpy, sarcastic, always annoyed, hates his job, hates his neighbors, and seems permanently disappointed in life. As children, we laugh at him. As teenagers, we tolerate him. But then something strange happens when you grow up. One day, without warning, you realize you don't just understand Squidward, you are Squidward. And that's when it hits you. Squidward isn't the worst character in SpongeBob SquarePants. He's the most relatable, the most realistic, and easily the most misunderstood. Let's start with the biggest misconception about Squidward. People think he's lazy. He's not. He shows up to work every single day. On time? No enthusiasm, yes. But consistency? Elite. He works a soul-crushing job at the Krusty Krab where his boss underpays him, disrespects him, and exploits his labor, while his coworker is somehow happy to be there 24/7 like it's Disneyland. Squidward isn't lazy, he's burnt out. There's a massive difference. Think about his job for a second. He's a cashier in a fast food restaurant where customers are often rude, loud, and sometimes straight up unhinged. He has to smile, take orders, deal with complaints, and pretend he enjoys it. All while SpongeBob is bouncing around screaming about spatulas and jellyfish like rent doesn't exist. Squidward sees the reality of working life. SpongeBob sees vibes. That alone puts Squidward closer to adulthood than anyone else in Bikini Bottom. And let's talk about SpongeBob and Patrick for a moment, because this is where Squidward really gets unfairly judged. Imagine living between two neighbors who have zero concept of personal space, boundaries, or quiet time. SpongeBob wakes up at the crack of dawn screaming, "Good morning!" plays music badly, invades your house uninvited, and treats every moment like a musical episode.
Patrick, on the other hand, contributes absolutely nothing but chaos, stupidity, and bad ideas.
Squidward just wants peace, silence, maybe a nice afternoon practicing his clarinet. That's not evil, that's mental survival. People say Squidward hates fun. He doesn't hate fun, he hates forced fun. He hates being told that happiness has to look a certain way. SpongeBob's happiness is loud, childish, and non-stop. Squidward's happiness is quiet, artistic, and internal. Society tends to worship SpongeBob energy, hustle culture, positivity, always smiling, while treating Squidward energy like a flaw. But not everyone wants to scream with joy at 6 a.m. Some people just want to sit down and breathe. Now let's talk about Squidward's dreams, because this is where his character becomes painfully real. Squidward wants to be an artist, a musician, a refined, cultured individual. He practices his clarinet relentlessly. He creates art. He dreams of recognition and respect. And every single time he puts himself out there, the world crushes him. People mock his music. They laugh at his art. They ignore his effort. If that isn't the most realistic depiction of adulthood ever written, I don't know what is. Here's the part people don't like admitting. Squidward actually tries. He just doesn't get rewarded. SpongeBob tries and gets praised. Patrick doesn't try and somehow still wins. Squidward tries and fails publicly. That messes with a person. After enough rejection, sarcasm becomes armor. Cynicism becomes self-defense. Squidward's attitude isn't who he is, it's what life turned him into. And despite all that, Squidward isn't cruel. He doesn't actively seek to hurt people. He doesn't sabotage SpongeBob's career. He doesn't steal, manipulate, or exploit others. He complains, he sighs, he rolls his eyes, that's it. Even when he lashes out, it's usually after being pushed way past a reasonable limit. Honestly, most of us would have snapped way earlier. Another thing people ignore is that Squidward is incredibly self-aware. He knows his job is terrible. He knows he's not famous. He knows his dreams haven't worked out yet. SpongeBob, on the other hand, is blissfully ignorant. Patrick doesn't even know where he is half the time. Squidward understands reality, and that awareness is heavy. Intelligence and awareness don't always bring happiness. Sometimes they bring disappointment.
Squidward carries that weight.
There's also a deep loneliness to Squidward that people joke about but rarely take seriously. He lives alone. He doesn't have close friends. His attempts to connect usually fail or backfire. Even when he tries to distance himself, people invade his space. It's a special kind of loneliness where you're surrounded by people, but still feel completely isolated. That's not comedy, that's quietly devastating. And yet, despite everything, Squidward has moments of kindness. Moments where he helps SpongeBob. Moments where he protects him. Moments where he shows pride, even if he pretends not to. Squidward cares more than he lets on, which makes his struggle even more human. If he truly didn't care, he wouldn't be angry. He'd be empty. The biggest reason Squidward is misunderstood is because SpongeBob SquarePants is framed through a child's lens. Kids see SpongeBob as the hero because SpongeBob represents endless joy, imagination, and freedom from responsibility. Adults see Squidward because he represents reality, disappointment, unmet expectations, and survival. The show didn't change, we did. And that's why Squidward grows more relatable with age. Squidward is the character who shows up even when he's tired. He's the character who has dreams but keeps missing the finish line. He's the character who wants peace in a world that never shuts up. He's the character who understands that happiness isn't loud for everyone. And most importantly, he's the character who keeps going despite constant frustration. So no, Squidward isn't bitter for no reason. He isn't miserable by choice. He isn't a villain. He's a working adult trapped between unrealistic optimism and weaponized stupidity, trying to maintain dignity in a world that doesn't respect it. That's not something to mock. That's something to recognize. Squidward isn't just relatable, he's honest. And sometimes, honesty looks like sarcasm, exhaustion, and a deep sigh at the end of the day. He's also misunderstood because people confuse sensitivity with bitterness. Squidward isn't angry for no reason. He reacts to a world that constantly disrespects his boundaries, his time, and his efforts. Imagine going to work every day, being surrounded by coworkers who are loud, intrusive, and completely unaware of personal space, and being expected to smile through it. Squidward is judged harshly for showing frustration, but most adults watching the show quietly think, yeah, that reaction actually makes sense. He's not cruel by default, he's just exhausted. Another thing people overlook is how deeply Squidward wants to be understood and appreciated for who he is, not for what he provides. SpongeBob is loved because he works hard and spreads joy. Patrick is loved because he's harmless and clueless. Squidward, however, wants to be loved for his mind, his creativity, his taste, his individuality. And that kind of validation is much harder to come by in a world that rewards noise over nuance. When Squidward plays his clarinet, it's not just a joke about bad music. It's him desperately trying to express something personal, something meaningful, in a world that laughs before it listens. And let's talk about the clarinet for a moment, because it's one of the most tragic and relatable symbols in the entire show. Squidward practices constantly. He attends lessons, he studies art, he goes to galleries. He genuinely tries to improve. And yet, he's never recognized as talented by others. That hits close to home for a lot of people. How many adults put time into passions that never turn into success? How many people work on skills that bring them joy but never bring them praise? Squidward represents the reality that effort does not always equal reward, and that truth makes people uncomfortable, so they laugh instead. What makes it worse is that Squidward actually does have moments of brilliance. There are episodes where he shines, where his art is praised, where he's finally admired, and for a brief moment, you see the Squidward he always believed he could be. But those moments are temporary. They always fade, and when they do, he's forced back into the same routine, the same job, the same neighborhood, the same noise. That rise and fall mirrors real life perfectly. Small victories, followed by long stretches of monotony. Temporary validation, followed by silence. Squidward is also misunderstood because people forget how often he actually shows kindness. Despite everything, he still looks out for SpongeBob more than he wants to admit. He protects him when things go too far. He worries about him. He even misses him when he's gone, though he would never openly admit it. His annoyance often masks care. That's another adult trait people don't recognize until they experience it themselves. Not all love is loud. Some love shows up as concern, frustration, or tough tolerance. Then there's Squidward's dream of escape. He constantly fantasizes about moving away, starting fresh, living somewhere quiet where people appreciate him. That desire to leave everything behind and reinvent yourself is incredibly relatable. Almost everyone, at some point, dreams of packing up and starting over somewhere new, believing that the problem isn't them, but the environment. Squidward's tragedy is that even when he does escape, he often realizes that happiness isn't guaranteed there either. Sometimes the problem isn't just the place. Sometimes it's the weight of unmet expectations we carry with us. And that's the core of Squidward's relatability. He lives with disappointment. Not explosive disappointment, not dramatic failure, but the quiet, everyday kind. The kind that builds slowly. The kind that shows up as sarcasm, eye rolls, and emotional distance.
He's the embodiment of the adult who once had big dreams and now just wants peace.
Not fame, not chaos, just peace. He's also misunderstood because SpongeBob's world doesn't slow down for him. The show rewards optimism, innocence, and relentless cheerfulness. Squidward exists as the counterbalance, the reminder that not everyone can live like that. And instead of treating that difference with empathy, the world treats it as a flaw. But in reality, Squidward is the most human character in a sea full of cartoons. When kids watch SpongeBob, they laugh at Squidward. When adults watch SpongeBob, they slowly become Squidward. That shift is telling. It's not that Squidward changes. It's that we do. As responsibilities pile up, as dreams get complicated, as peace becomes more valuable than excitement, Squidward starts to feel less like a joke and more like a mirror. He doesn't hate happiness. He hates forced happiness. He doesn't hate people. He hates being overwhelmed by them. He doesn't hate work. He hates meaningless work that goes unrecognized. And he doesn't hate life. He hates a life that refuses to give him space to breathe. Squidward is misunderstood because society prefers simple joy over complex emotion. SpongeBob is easy to love. Squidward asks you to think, to empathize, to sit with discomfort. And most people would rather laugh than reflect. But the truth is, Squidward is not the villain of SpongeBob SquarePants. He's the quiet warning, the reminder of what happens when creativity goes unseen, when boundaries are ignored, and when adulthood arrives without the life you imagined. That's why Squidward isn't just relatable. He's painfully accurate. He represents the part of us that still wants beauty in a loud world, meaning in a shallow routine, and dignity in a job that barely acknowledges our existence. And maybe that's why we laugh at him for so long. Because admitting we understand him means admitting we see ourselves in him,